Hello, listeners. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Tia Sherringham. Tia is the General Counsel at DoorDash, and she has had a remarkable journey that she talks to us about. Tia actually started DoorDash 8 years ago as lawyer number two, and over the last 8 years has gone on and been an important part of that DoorDash journey right through to the pandemic and IPO and where DoorDash are today, a household name, of course. So she talks a little bit about her team, what she calls the Department of Yes and her problem solving mindset. It's a fantastic discussion, as they all are, but this one is particularly fun. So in the usual fashion, sit back, chillax, and enjoy the episode. Tia Sherringham, thank you so much for joining me. I know we've tried a few times, so finally we're together now, and I'm going to launch straight in. You're the most senior legal officer, the General Counsel, CLO at DoorDash, but you always weren't that. Tell me the Tia Sherringham story pre-2017 when you joined DoorDash.
Of course. Jim, thank you so much for having me here. Super excited to chat with you today. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about what motivates me, and who I am, and then how I found my way to DoorDash as well. A quick anecdote that probably captures me in a nutshell. When I was in first grade, and I promise I won't do the whole chronology, so don't worry. But when I was in first grade, I was new to school, and my mom is a trained psychologist, and so she gave me this pep talk. And I walked onto the playground, and I walked up to a group of kids and said, "Hi, my name is Tia. I'm here to be your friend, and I'm going to solve all of your problems."
Oh my God.
To my core, that is my brand. To this day, I am a problem solver. I try to do that with empathy and curiosity to understand what's motivating people and how to navigate various situations. And obviously, throughout my career, that's taken different turns. But really, that led me to an interest in the law, and that really kind of shaped who I am and really the way that I approach my work at DoorDash. And I will say that when I met the DoorDash team, they had such a high sense of integrity, really mission driven to solve the problems of merchants and consumers and dashers. And that felt so genuine that I knew it was going to be a good fit for me.
Ed, I can just imagine, and you wouldn't have been able to imagine, no doubt, in 2017 when you joined, the nature, scope, and scale of the problem, because most of them presumably will not have been encountered before, just given the nature of a DoorDash business. And so I've been super curious to ask, what was that like, and what are some standout moments for you, given the change that you will have seen back from when starting through to today? And you had the pandemic, of course, in the middle there. Give us a sense of what was that like in leading or getting to lead a legal function in that kind of environment.
So when I joined DoorDash in 2017 and told my friends I was going, they all thought I was going to DoorDash, the 1980s jeans company, which had greater brand recognition at the time. So you have to put yourself into that frame of mind.
Yep.
We were 200 people. It was a super scrappy team. I was the second lawyer. We were pitching tents in the office to make more conference room space. And it was really this energy that we were trying to solve problems for all these various audiences. And there was a lot of engagement and excitement to do that. And obviously we had a few rounds of fundraising then, so kind of a focus there. And then we had this IPO journey and getting the company ready for an IPO. This is ready in 2018, 2019. And then, of course, we all remember March 2020. And March 2020 was just this incredible moment. Obviously, personally, it's hard not to tell your own story about the pandemic that we all remember. But also for DoorDash, we went pencils down on the IPO, and we focused on how can we solve problems for merchants. So the first weekend, I remember it was all hands on deck. Every employee was starting to upload menus so that merchants could get online, could reach their customers during this shutdown that was so unprecedented. And for consumers, it sounds kind of silly now to say it, but at the time there was a shortage of toilet paper. that we can recall being really worried that the supply chain was going to fall apart. People couldn't get kind of the basic goods that they were so used to having. And so we'd had plans for convenience, and we pulled all those plans forward to really meet the moment of what people needed. And for Dashers, similarly, we made sure that we could get PPE so that they could join the platform and have earning opportunities in a way that felt safe and respected. And so it was just this kind of incredible moment to figure out, what we could do to solve these problems.
And did you go from, and did you and the team go from the point of thinking this could be an existential crisis for us and we may not recover, to what happened with a lot of software companies? Suddenly, the opposite happened. There was a massive rebound. Did you go through that journey thinking we might not survive, to how are we going to handle all this demand?
It's funny when I think back on that moment, we were so customer obsessed. Again, we had this IPO process in the background, and I had an S1 that I had drafted, and we just paused on all of that. And we made decisions. We had this Main Street Strong donation of $100 million towards merchants to make sure that they could continue to be in business and to do their work. And so our focus was so much there that it was kind of an afterthought in some ways around like what was next for us and what did it mean for DoorDash. And then obviously we were positioned at the end of the year to kind of pick up the pen again, tell our story now that had already changed. We were really writing history as it was happening, and then to be able to go public in December of 2020.
Yeah. And if you think about from that time, and that would have been a very different, the whole organisation, once you go public, of course, the reporting requirements, different level of scrutiny, different level of compliance. Talk a little bit about that and how that changed. I suppose how that changed perhaps the way you operated, and the legal function had operated.
What's so interesting about my own career in DoorDash is that our growth is parallel. And the biggest challenge for me has been to up-level myself and to be adaptable and to meet the needs of the business and to be in some ways a different type of leader for every stage, right? The leader that you have for a 200-person startup is different than the leader that you would look to take you public, potentially different than the leader who's going to lead a legal team of 150 with lawyers across the globe. And so I've always been trying to figure out, how do I learn? I'm incredibly thankful to all the GCs out there that took my call when they didn't want me, and just trying to figure out, again, how do I move the business forward? And so the challenge for me was staying really close to the business and understanding the need to allow the business to be agile and to pivot and to move quickly, while also layering on an additional layer of expectations that we now have from stakeholders, from shareholders, from regulators. The bigger that we have become, the expectations obviously have changed and matured. And so I often talk about balancing the two. And we're still balancing the two today because we have some businesses that are just in their early days.
It's funny, Tia. When you say that, I imagine, and I think about, I imagine there'll be the urge to just get the next person into the legal function who is ready at that stage, rather than the person that was there at the 200 people mark. It must be just a natural, well, we need to get someone now who has done an IPO before. We need to get someone now who has run a public company for 5 years. That hasn't happened with you. So clearly you've been able to demonstrate essentially the growth that you need at both a personal and professional level. That is super interesting, because I can just imagine the natural inclination may be, let's just get someone in here who has done this before. Talk a bit about that, because there must be lots of GCs out there to be fascinated with with your own kind of personal growth story and how you've managed to get through the very different stages of a high growth company.
So first off, I feel very fortunate that I have a team that was willing to bet on me and grow with me. And our leadership team has been together for a long time, so we've really grown together. But I was going to say this is a secret, but this is not really a secret. I have an amazing bench, and I have always worked to hire people that are better than me, and that people that I can learn from, that our team can learn from. And that has been a huge key to my success and our team's success. And so there's a good number of folks on my bench that have, are more seasoned in certain areas. And I've looked for that, both in terms of subject matter expertise, public company expertise, international expertise. And I try to think about what's next and bring those folks in so we can grow together.
It's I say that a lot too, actually, about being able to find and bring in people who are smarter than and better than you are. I think that's something that's easily said, but really kind of hard to do, because you've got to put your ego to side. But if you are comfortable, and that is a natural way, or even an unnatural way of operating, but you learn. That is the most empowering thing, because really growth success is more often than not in the agency of others rather than in the agency of yourself. So it sounds like you've embraced that wholeheartedly from day one.
Yes, and we always say, you have to operate with, first and foremost, we have to do what's best for DoorDash, then what's best for the team, and then what's best for me. And to your point, I always believe if the worst thing that happens is I've, hired myself out of a job, that's probably a good thing, for the company some way too. So you're growing kind of towards that. And it does require, I think, a certain amount of humility and a willingness to learn and a willingness to say to folks, like, I'm bringing you in to allow you to do the best work of your career here. I'm not going to block it. It's not going to be a channel through me. Right? I'm going to put you forward, and that's going to advance all of us.
And any particular strategies that you have to really empower your team members? What is it that you do to give them that sense of essentially? I often talk about believing in someone more than they believe in themselves, and then it is again incredibly empowering, and there's nothing more motivating than someone that you respect believes you can do something. You will move heaven and earth not to disappoint them. So talk any strategies around what you do or how you achieve that.
So we operate with what we call a DRI model, or a directly responsible individual model, right? And so I make sure, obviously, that folks feel, I'm at this point, there's a handful of things where I'm the DRI, but largely it's my team, right? And they know that I'm in their court. So I'm their coach. I'm there behind them.
You got their backs?
I got their back. Yeah. We also talk about, we call it dropping the egg. And I've done this kind of talk with my legal team where it's like, you drop the egg and there's a cartoon. You drop the egg and you can say things like, oh, the egg rolled off the table and fell. Or the egg, slowly gained momentum. I dropped the egg. I forgot. Okay. We take high accountability culture, but I'm never going to say, if you filled me in, I'm always going to have your back, right? I'm not going to second guess the decision. And that's, again, building trust and building rapport and giving people the confidence that we are moving quickly. We know we're going to make mistakes, but that's what being part of a team means.
Talk about a little bit about your external partners on this journey, whether they might be mentors. I'm always interested to hear about law firms too, how you've partnered with your external legal services providers. Talk a little bit about that and how you've worked with them to help you achieve what you've done at DoorDash.
So we're really lucky that I think of our external partners, the firms we work with, and the people there as extensions of our team. And we have partners who have taken the responsibility of getting to know the business really seriously. So they know our business, they embed in the business, they understand the product experience. There's one partner that comes to mind. Not only is she using the app as a consumer, but she goes dashing. So she uses the
I love that.
To deliver, and she does it regularly, and it just gives her such a closer sense of, again, the product experience and what we're trying to do. And there's an expectation of that from our firms and partners, and so they're really that extension. And with that, we want practical advice, right? Like 9 times out of 10, I don't want a memo.
Yeah.
I want a perspective. I want to know, if you were in my shoes. Like, we're only coming with difficult decisions. Right. Great area.
Correct. If it was easy, I would have answered it myself.
Got it. Right. I've seen it. But I want that perspective. I want to hear, these are the trends that we're seeing in the industry. These are what other clients are thinking through. These are consequences that you may not be thinking about now, but you might want to be thinking about in the future. This is the regulatory perspective. This is a tax perspective, that sort of interdisciplinary perspective that I think a firm is really well situated to provide. And then I want a perspective. And so we're really lucky to have found that. And it's a really invaluable part of our practice.
And looking ahead to the next couple of years, at least 12 months, let's talk on this. What are the top 2 or 3 things that are kind of top of mind for you and the team that you're willing to share in terms of what your focus is going to be and what you're looking to achieve?
So I am really excited because we're on the kind of the precipice now of forming a global legal team. 3 years ago, we acquired a company called Volt, an incredible partnership between the 2 companies. We're now under one umbrella. And again, it's a new challenge to think about what does it mean to run a global legal team that is very efficient, that remains local where it needs to be. Obviously, we want local teams to be able to make decisions quickly. Certainly, we don't want folks to have to run everything up the flagpole to central in some form where they should be able to make decisions autonomously. And so trying to figure out what those areas are. And then also, where are we stronger together? Where does it make sense for us to take a beat, to share learnings, to have a unified strategy, whether that's in privacy or a different area. And so that's what we're figuring out right now. And it's super interesting. And I feel so lucky to also be able to partner with this team that has a different perspective and has worked differently, but has also been really successful.
And roughly how many in the global legal team?
So there's about 30 or so in the global legal team today. And we're kind of coming together now. And so it's also just a really interesting opportunity to learn from different cultures and different perspectives. And we have lawyers, all over the world right now.
Cool. Okay. So that's one priority, kind of getting that global team together and humming. Any other priorities you see over the course of the next 12 or 24 months?
So perhaps the flip side of that, as we're growing, as we're becoming a global team and a more dispersed team around the globe, is thinking about how do we remain efficient and not have what I think of as coordination tax.
Yeah.
We're very collaborative. I think we're a beautifully collaborative team, which is always a plus. But occasionally you see situations where it's plus this lawyer, plus this lawyer, plus this specialist, plus this regional person. And that just slows things down naturally. And so figuring out, again, how do we provide guidance to the business from a business perspective that is speaking with one voice, that's clear, and that's efficient. And that's a bit of a challenge. And so that's also top of mind for me to figure out how do we provide that value and impact to the business.
Often the in-house legal team can have, there can be a perception around it's legal, it's going to be difficult, can we get around it? They're going to say no. Tell me how you think about that and how, and perhaps some strategies around how the team can be perceived differently than that kind of negative connotation. Do you think about that? And what do you want the whole of DoorDash to be thinking about when they're dealing with the legal team?
So, Jim, I had this experience recently where I was at a dinner and I was sitting next to a product leader. It was at a conference. And when I introduced myself, I could just tell that she was like deeply regretful of her seating.
Oh, no, I got the lawyer next to me.
She looked like that. She was like, oh, as we started talking, and I quickly got the sense that the experience that she'd had with legal is one that I know happens at some companies, or at least that the business views it, where it's like, oh, it's the Department of No, right? It's like, that's where my ideas go to die. That's like, they're kind of a necessary evil or a check the box exercise. And obviously, like most folks, we want to show the value that we can bring. And so our philosophy for the DoorDash team is, we call it yes and.
Yes and. I love that.
And it's a philosophy. It's an approach, right? So you walk into a room, again, with a problem-solving mindset. I'm here to help the team solve this problem. I'm not here to say this is a yes or no exercise. I want to solve the problem. And so the first thing is really understanding what the problem is that the business is trying to solve. And that can be different than the question that
you get. Yeah.
Right. And so then it's sort of figuring out, are there guardrails? Yes, we can do this. And the following needs to be true. We need to start by piloting in this area, for example, or, you need to come back once we've seen the results of this test, or can we do this a little bit differently? And it's our job to provide a little bit broader context. It might be okay to do this now, but there could be downstream consequences. And so making sure that the team is equipped with that, and again, coming in with a problem solving mindset and energy is so important. And I've seen the team do this in so many different ways and in different contexts. I was actually reflecting on the Super Bowl as it was just a few weeks ago now. And last year, DoorDash had a Super Bowl ad that was delivering everything that was advertised in the Super Bowl to one lucky winner.
I remember that. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, yep.
To me, it's a great example because, when we first heard this, you can imagine the complexity that this would entail. And the legal team got in there with the marketing team and really brainstormed ways to make this big, ambitious dream of an ad come to life to show what the DoorDash platform can do. And so that's really the attitude that the team has. And I think it's energy that we bring. And I've seen, as a result, lawyers get invited into rooms, get invited to other teams' offsites, which is, to me, the biggest sign of success when people want you there.
Yeah. And there's definitely, I think there's sometimes a bit of unlearning to do as a lawyer where, and just think of the way you've been trained and the way you went to law school and so forth, and it was very much you can do this and you cannot do this. And that's the way you solve problems. That's the way you answered questions. And you did that for years. So kind of unlearning that natural default to say, okay, I'm going to work out a way. This is a problem that I've got, and I'm going to work out a way to solve the business problem rather than giving a yes or no answer. So
I often tell new teammates who join, start by providing an offering to your business partner. Find a key stakeholder and solve one problem for them. It can be a small thing. It doesn't even need to be a legal thing. Just something that causes them some friction or something, and just provide a solution to them. And once you kind of get into that, into that pattern, they start seeing you a little bit differently, builds a brand differently. And then you're kind of well on your way to getting out of, as you said, this like yes, no, instead of providing value and having impact.
When you look out, anything that you're excited about, whether it's around technology, AI, collaboration with GC, whatever it might be, anything that you're looking forward to and excited about.
Well, certainly, I think AI has a lot of promise, and we're excited, again, to see kind of what that can bring, especially for in-house teams. I think it's such an opportunity, for us to leverage ourselves into more of a business role, into being kind of that judgment and thought partner. And I think AI, has a good place in helping us do that. And then I really think that in a lot of ways, especially for DoorDash, it's still, again, it sounds a little trite, it's overused, but it is day one. Like we have the sense that we are just at the very beginning of our journey, that there's a lot for us to accomplish. There's so many different markets and services and products that we can really bring to our various audiences that we're excited about. And there's a lot of energy to do that.
All right, I'm going to wrap up with some of my favorite questions. Take yourself back to your 25-year-old self, and what advice, Tia, would you be giving to your 25-year-old self? I shared with you just before we jumped on she's going to be 25-year-old daughter, so I have one. So what advice, Tia, to your 25-year-old self?
I have a 5-year-old little guy, and I actually gave him this advice recently. We had a event at his school, and the class read a book, and the teachers were asking questions, and the kids were, some were answering, I would say, on point. They're 5 years old, right? Some were, some were, kind of screaming like toilet and whatever. All the kids were kind of running around the room. And my son was next to me, and he was super quiet. And I kind of turned to him and said, "Hey, buddy, like, don't you want to answer the questions?" And he looked at me and said, "Well, I don't want to get them wrong."
Oh, there we go. I know where this is heading.
I felt that so deeply. And I would tell, what I told him, I'd say to my 25-year-old self too, like, just, people want to hear from you. They want to hear your perspective, like free yourself. I would tell my 25-year-old self, like free yourself from the sense that, I really felt for a long time that I had to get it quote unquote right. that I had to sound perfectly polished, that I had to have all the facts before providing an opinion, that I needed to, I pride myself on being pretty good at bringing in various stakeholders and balancing those points of view before giving a recommendation. And sometimes in conversation, people just want your gut. They want to know, like, hey, how do what's your inclination on this, or participate in the conversation, right? They want to brainstorm with you, especially kind of in the role that I have. And so that was a transition that took me time, and it made me uncomfortable to do that. And when I heard my son say that, I was like, oh wow, this goes back a ways. But
Yep.
hopefully
Yep.
he'll learn.
All right, one more question, and I can't resist asking your favorite food to DoorDash.
Well, if I have to be really truthful, if I was to pull up the app, my team knows this. I survive off of my lattes, so I order a lot. There's like a coffee at like every door for me. But my house is really like, we're all about efficiency, right? I have a little guy at home, so it's groceries on Sunday night. Last week I had cupcakes dashed to his
Oh, I love that.
It's a really good hack. And flowers for Valentine's Day to my friends. So it's
fantastic.
Pretty amazing.
Tia, it's been an absolute delight speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure the audience is going to love this episode and love your journey. So thanks again. Bye-bye for now.